I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Brenda, would you please do the roll call?
Yes. President Klein Jerome,
Here.
Vice President Poston,
Here.
Director Gosa,
Here.
Director Barnes,
Here.
Director Hayes,
Here.
Director Beck, here, Director Potts.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Could I have a motion on subject 1.04, approve of the purchase of a weapons detection system?
Madam President,
Director Gosa.
I move that the board approve the installation of weapons detection systems in our high schools and middle school buildings.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions? We discussed this last week.
Madam President?
Director Potts.
Yeah, I have a question that I don't know there's an answer to, but when we man these things during the school day, if we have gym classes that go outside and come back in, who's going to monitor these things? Where is the personnel going to come from? Or are we going to put one at the gym door where the gym classes come in and out?
That's a good question, and what we're going to do after, and this is going to answer your question too, Director Beck. So this is the start of the purchasing of the items, and part of the reason we have to do this is for the grant. The grant, all items must be purchased, funds expended by January 1. There's a lot of work that goes into the training, the planning, and working out all of the things that the questions that you just asked, Director Potts. The good part is that this morning we had a team of people. We were at Rock Island School watching how they implement. We were able to ask those questions during the day. We also have schools that have, I'm thinking of Davenport Central, their welding shop is outside. The students have to come back in. And so all of those things will be addressed. If the students are going outside, our goal is to bring the students back in to school in a safe manner, whether it be through the weapons detection system. But if students are in a gym class supervised, I think that can be worked out at the building level through our implementation, Director Potts.
I like the answer.
Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
Director Potts, do you have any other questions?
No, that was a good answer.
Anybody? Director Poston.
We discussed it a little bit the other night, but as far as the other doors throughout the building, how will they be secured so that a student couldn't let somebody in a door that doesn't have the weapons detection?
So phase 2 will be coming to the school board shortly. Will be a door monitoring system. And so that's a longer phase, and it takes a lot more implementation work for us to do.
Director Gosa.
Quick question. For the special ed students, I'm assuming I believe most of them either come earlier or at a different time or in a different door. We'll be able to facilitate those students as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Anybody else have a question, comment? Director Beck?
And just to reiterate, this is the beginning of a process, so it's not. Some people I've had a number of questions of people worried that once we vote on this, the next day we're going to have things in place, and I just want to assure people that there's a whole process that goes on before they're actually in place that will involve the training and setup and procedures that go along with it. So thanks.
Anybody else? When do you expect this will be
up and going approximately by second semester or
No, our goal would be,
third?
like I said at the other meeting, as fast as we can implement it
Oh.
the right way. We're hoping by the fourth quarter, because there might need to be some electrical work that needs to be done, the training, the implementation, getting them here, staffing, all of those things. What do we do with the PE class? What do we do with the weld shop? Look, all those things
Mhm.
we need to really iron out. We want to do it right. So as fast as possible.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Anybody else?
I have one.
Director Hayes.
Now, with the systems, you said there were 19 of them, and some of them were portable. Does like a wand come with them at all to kind of expedite like the in and outs for like gym class or something that's temporary?
Correct. The wanding will be necessary for our systems when they go off. We'll need to locate the spot, whether it be a backpack or a Chromebook or whatever it will be. We'll need to wand the individual, just like it was at the stadium.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Director Potts, do you want to adjourn the meeting, please?
So move.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of adjournment say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Meeting adjourned. Yeah. Student case number 1234. The board concludes the student did violate the regulations and rules established by the board, and his presence is detrimental to the best interest of the district and injurious to the health of other students. May I have Director Beck to read the finding of facts?
That the student did bring a handgun to school.
May I have a motion?
I move that the board's consideration of the evidence presented in the matter of the recommendation to suspend student case number 1234. Student number 1234 will be expelled with services through graduation or 21st birthday, whichever occurs first, from Davenport Community School District. Student number 1234 will not be allowed to be on any Davenport Community School District property or to attend any school event where a Davenport team or group is participating during the time of the expulsion.
May I have a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. This is a roll call vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Barnes,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
May I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. Call for the vote. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Barnes,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Gosa. And my vote is yes. Meeting is adjourned. I call this committee of the whole meeting to order. Just would like to make a note that we are swapping a couple items on the agenda. And the first thing we're going to address is the memorandum of understanding with the City of Davenport for the Junior Theater. And I will turn it over to Superintendent Schneckloff.
Thank you very much. Well, it's an honor to have our guests here. I swear we didn't set this room up like it would be an interrogation on purpose, but we're so glad you're here. We value greatly the partnership between the Davenport schools and the city of Davenport, and it's been a strong one for many years here. And so we're glad you're here, and what a fun topic to talk about, the utilization of facilities and space for one of Davenport's star programs. And so with us today, we have Doug Maxiner, did I get it right? And Hannah Whitehurst. Doug is the new city administrator for Davenport, and we're glad you two are here. And thanks for coming and doing a little joint session with us today. So what you have in front of us is an MOU. And I'm just going to briefly talk about it. Our attorneys have been going back and forth to make sure that we have the right things down on paper that benefit both of our organizations, that really allow us to move forward with a strong relationship. And so what we are proposing tonight for discussion and then a vote whenever both parties agree we should vote. We're thinking in the December to get this done for you guys in December. We can talk about that afterwards to collaboratively do that. But we are looking at utilizing the Davenport Learning Center facility, which is currently at our operations site. There are 3 sections inside of that building that are currently not being used, that we are storing items in, that would make a wonderful place, a temporary or permanent place for junior theater. So what has occurred is we have walked through that facility with the junior theater staff. Both members of our board and some of your elected officials have viewed that space and believe that would be a very good bridge to a potential next step for junior theater, or the notion that it could be something more. But what we're bringing forward today is a 5-year lease, and really the main component of this lease would be that there's going to need to be some upgrades done to that facility in order for junior theater to get in there. And so we're going to do a lease where those are considered as payments and move forward from that way. And the upgrades are going to need to be pretty significant for our junior theater folks, but I think it's a great option for the city. I guess I'll turn it over to you guys if you have any comments or anything to add.
Do I need to push
The light is very delayed, so just test the mic to see if it's on.
There we go.
And you don't have to hold it.
Okay, perfect. Well, first of all, thank you for having us here.
And I apologize, Doug. We do have one board member online.
Okay.
And we'll have to be a little bit more direct into the microphone.
Well,
Thanks, sir.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here. This partnership allows us to continue a beloved program for junior dance and theater. And I believe it also complements the mission of the school district well, giving our children excellent opportunities to build up confidence over the years. So that is the whole mission of what we're doing. It serves ages 3 to 18, and it's the second oldest junior theater group in the country. So it's been very popular and certainly very interested in keeping that going. So we were looking for a good opportunity to transition. This turned out to be the most logical transition point for us. It allows us to continue that beloved program for up to 5 years, and while we search for a more permanent solution. So very, very pleased, very generous terms that have been brought forward to us, and we're very pleased to eagerly accept those if that's the will of the board here. So
Turn it back over to you, Madam President.
Do any board members? Turn on my own mic. Any board members have comments, questions? Director Beck?
Just to clarify, the former junior theater area was classrooms and performance space. And to my knowledge, this doesn't have the same type of theater setup. Is that something that's still going to work for the programming?
I think it'll very much work for the temporary, for the short term. Long term, we're going to look for something a little bit more expansive for some other options, but this serves our purpose very well for the short term, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Director Potts, do you have a question or comment?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe this particular building was on our list for future disposal. Is that not correct?
When we went through our long range facility, that was an option. Right
And
now,
so,
oh, sorry.
go ahead.
So the discussion was that we would move all of our maintenance operation, all of that to the Brady Street complex. And since then, we have decided to go in a different direction with those buildings that are on that site in that complex because the choppiness of a which operation. So we've decided for the short time during that long range facility conversation that our maintenance, because inside of that building, we have stepping stones, we have our maintenance garage, and we have our bakery inside of that building. And then during that time, we had a major hailstorm go through and a new roof was put on it. So we began to utilize that facility again. We also have our RISE programs inside of that facility as well. So we began to use it. The utilization took a turn during the long range facility.
Well, schools will always fill the space they have with something.
You're exactly right, Director Potts.
I know, I used to do it. So we're looking at a 5-year arrangement,
Correct.
and the financial impact to the district is neutral.
Very minimal.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have questions or comments? Director Gosa?
What is your guys' process? Like, how are you going to get this to your city council if we're looking at voting on this in December? I mean, I want to say this politically correct, but you guys don't seem to be very calibrated and aligned. And I want to make sure that that your council members are aware of this stuff. Honestly, I'm a little disappointed that at least like the mayor didn't show up or something, or some council member, because we're all here, but whatever. But what is your guys' process? Like, how are you going to get this in front of your council members so they have enough time to look at this stuff? And you guys already have a timeline, and when are you all looking to take action on this?
We are we are actually bringing this to the City Council and Committee of the Whole on Wednesday. We are asking for expedited process on this. I am not anticipating, I don't want to speak for the City Council, but I am not anticipating any issues on getting consensus on this moving forward and moving very quickly.
Okay. I've seen some things go sideways with lack of information and stuff, so I just wanted to make sure that, I mean, I think it's a great opportunity for us to work together and continue that partnership, but I just didn't want to put in all the work and then something fell by the wayside, so I just wanted to make sure. So you guys will be discussing it with your folks and then when would you be looking at taking action?
Well, we've asked for expedited process. We're hoping to get definitive action by the end of the month.
Okay.
By the end of the year. So.
Okay. Thank you.
So if we take action in December, you take action, you anticipate you would start moving in and remodeling and fixing up whatever you need in January, or?
We would ask if everybody agrees that we get in shortly after the first of the year to start letting our architect do what they need to do to modify this to meet our needs, so we can start getting that construction work built out and bid. So,
do you have a deadline when you have to be out of Annie Whitmire?
I believe that's in late April, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Comment, question? Director Boston?
Superintendent Snakeloff, will there be somebody from the school district that will oversee as far as any major changes in the building? Will that be the operations manager then?
Yes. And really, that the inside of that building, it used to be an old department store, and so all the walls that are in there are can easily be built back up or taken down. So that's one of the things that the junior theater really liked about that space. It's kind of flexible.
If I may.
Yes.
I believe the lease also requires us to present our plans for any modifications to you, so there's no surprises there.
Anybody else? Okay, we will be taking a vote on this in the near future, and we look forward to hearing that the council has done so too. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is modified allowable growth. And I guess I will turn this over to Courtney.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Our team is here tonight to update you on where we're at with implementation of our at-risk programming across our district. And with that, every year we have to then request of you all to approve us continuing to request funds from the state to support this work. So Courtney Olson, Executive Director of Equity and Learning Supports. Heather Harland is here with us, and she is our budget specialist. And Jen Van Fleet is our specialist for state and federal programs. So this is our why for our team when we think about the work we do to wrap supports and services around students. It's to design a pre-K-12 continuum of services within our system to meet the academic, social, emotional, and behavioral needs of our at-risk students in an effort to ensure high school graduation and a productive, hopeful vision for their secondary life, post-secondary life. These are two of our district growing excellence goals that directly align to the work that we are going to put in front of you tonight. The first is around our district goal of ensuring that all ninth graders are on track for graduation by the end of their freshman year. We know this is a huge indicator for graduating high school. So the first bullet point you'll see in 21-22, 69.3 of our 3% of our students were on track at the end of ninth grade. This also includes eighth grade students who took a course that goes onto their high school transcript, which would be algebra in eighth grade. In 22-23, 68.8%. And then my apologies, that last bullet point was a typo on my part, but I do want to update you that right now, currently, at the end of term 1, 75.6 of our ninth graders are on track with their credits to date. So we'll share a little bit more around the work that's been happening with that. And then there you can see our chronic absenteeism goal, which I know we've had in front of you many times. This is just a visual that our team has used with you all over the last 3 years since I've been here. And just this idea that prior our team being together was kind of more happenstance on how some of these dollars were used to put services to kids in our schools. And right now we're really working hard to build a system with intentionality and role definition and purpose. And so we really are living in the bottom layer of this visual of continuing to monitor what we're implementing, getting feedback from those in the building, and making adjustments as needed. So tonight we will go over our modified allowable growth for at-risk and dropout prevention program, and we'll talk about how we define at-risk in our state and in our district, and then continue to talk about how we're improving and making adjustments. Our team is more than just the three of us, and we meet every other week. We meet with principals quarterly to get feedback on how things are going with the services in their building, as well as help them spend the monies that they are allotted to support programming within their building. The goal is to take this to cabinet for review. We are here today for discussion, and then there will be a vote hopefully at the end of this month. So now I will pass it to Jen.
Good evening. The definition you see before you that we bring to you tonight stems from Iowa code language, which directs us to request to use a modified supplemental amount for students who are at risk, programming to support them. And so what we bring to you tonight, we take that to the next level. Go on to the next slide. The state then helps us to define what goes into a student who might be at risk. And so we really zoom in on components that are going to address our students who are suffering from homelessness, from dropout situations, returning dropouts, potential dropouts, and then also those who would benefit from alternative programming. When we saw the term potential dropout, we dug into that a little further. And so when we use that term, we're talking about students who have some issues with potentially attendance, engaging in school, academics, or even just foundational literacy and numeracy. The Iowa DOE, as they interpret that Iowa code language, allows us to decide locally how we define those specific indicators that put students at risk surrounded by programming. And so in Davenport, we define our interpretation of at-risk programming to be around academics, attendance, emotional safety, and being on track for graduation.
So since it's been a year since we've been in front of all of you, over the last couple months, we've been assessing how have these services been working for our students in our buildings, looking at the dollars that we have potentially moving forward and making adjustments. So as Jen just shared, that's the framework that we've decided to use in our district. So this is the data that we look at to make decisions in these same areas. I'll just highlight tonight that we'll be showing attendance data and graduation rate data. Academic data has already been put in front of you yet this year. And then emotional safety, as you know, the the conditions for learning survey is no longer a requirement of our state. And as a district, we've decided to pause on that for now, as we're going to be investigating other surveys that we think would better measure our culture within our surveys and our social emotional needs of our students.
So when we zoom in on attendance specifically, we're of course looking at ADA and chronic absenteeism rates. So we have some data to share with you tonight on those points. And then when we look at on track for graduation, we look at a 712 dropout rate, a 4-year graduation rate, and 9th graders who have 6.5 credits who are on track for graduation. On the next slide, you can see some data trends that we have been tracking since the 2018-19 school year. And so the first line that you see there addresses our ADA. And if you can tell, there's a little bit of a blip there. We are heading in the right direction here. And so the last data point that you see on this line would be currently, and then the first one would be back in 2018-19. Same thing with chronic absenteeism. The line is going to show you from 2018-19 all the way through present. And then our 5-year graduation rate is being pulled from the Iowa School Performance Profile. So we have data for that data point through the 21-22 school year. So we're always a little bit lagging on that particular data point. And then for our on track for graduation, we do have that data from 2018-19 through present. So you can see kind of a trend for those data. The big blips that you see on there would be the pandemic year. So you see kind of some unusual data there, but you can see our trajectory with our data. So when we look closer at that data, we always want to figure out what are we learning from the data. And so we've summarized some major points that we're seeing on this slide for you. we noticed that our ADA had improved by 1.3%, and our chronic absenteeism had improved by 2.7%. We also noticed that both rates had improved beyond where we were prior to the pandemic, which was a major goal for us. We also know that we have not yet met our growing excellence goal, stating that chronic absenteeism will be below the state average, which is 21.63%. For on track for graduation and graduation rate, we noticed that our on track for graduation rate has improved beyond where we were prior to the pandemic. And we know that we have not yet met our growing excellence goal, stating that 100% of students in 9th grade will earn 6.5 credits to be on track for graduation, although we know our BSATs are monitoring this very, very intentionally, as is the cabinet. The graduation rate trajectory shows a decline, although our most recent data, again, from the school performance profile is from spring of 2022. And again, with the BSATs focusing on this very intensely and intentionally, we hope to see a positive trend come out of that work.
So now that we have reviewed our data, we got feedback from our buildings, all of them around strengths and barriers of this work. So just to remind you of actions that we currently have in place over the last year, we have reimagined roles and programs that included our student success liaison, which was formerly our truancy liaison. So still a person who's dedicated to this work, but doing it in more of a proactive manner. We also have our mentoring and engagement specialist. The programs that we are implementing out at the DLC. And then these are a variety of roles that our buildings have as services to them and students that come out of these funds and that we're wrapping programs around. So current strengths that were shared, just successful implementation of layered supports aligned to their MTSS structures, effective use of SEBH and at-risk staff, low turnover in certain roles, and improved management and integration of these supports. Some ideas for next steps were to review effectiveness of all supports, address staffing challenges such as roles that are consistently hard to fill or keep filled, support allocation considerations such as using behavior data compared to the poverty data, for example. Coordination and clarity for all district initiatives, and resource gaps should be addressed.
As we continue around the continuous improvement process graphic, we then want to move from identifying those strengths and barriers to creating our plan. So essentially, what does this look like as we move forward, knowing what we know up to this point? So on the next slide, we share some of our current work, our current momentum as we collaborate with our learning supports group and all the others who help us provide input for our at-risk continuum. And so we will continue our cascading and calibration with principals, one-on-one meetings, going to principal meetings. We visit the cabinet to debrief them and to get feedback at the cabinet level for what we're developing and what we're thinking about. And then here we are at the school board, and we welcome your feedback as well. We continuously monitor those goals and success criteria to see if we are indeed moving the needle on what we are developing and putting in with intentional work. And we have several ongoing task teams that support this work. So as mentioned, we have our learning supports team. We meet every other week, but there's also a dedicated district attendance team. We have our state federal programs team, which we're looking closely at our compliance and our implementation of state federal programming. We have a newer team called our community and family engagement team because we had so many crossovers between work with our students and their families and engaging in school for their success. We have our new, as of last year, redefined Breaking Barriers team, where we are partnering with community entities, organizations, and talking about removing barriers to our students and their families engaging with school. We have our district literacy team that is looking really closely at what K-12 foundational literacy needs to look like. And then we have our curriculum council with all of our specialists for all of our different content areas. All of these teams are asked for input and to be critical friends in the development of a very thorough at-risk continuum of supports for our students. We continue to review data as we plan for current and ongoing. So we solicit stakeholder feedback. We look for gaps and we look for opportunities to build equity in our resource allocation. We are monitoring our attendance data, our graduation data. We monitor very closely how we are allocating funding, and we look closely at K-12 literacy patterns. So again, we want to say, again, what are we doing differently than we were a few years ago? We are really trying to leverage that full continuum of supports. That's our end game goal. And we feel closer now than we ever have before, that we have a pretty solid continuum of supports, and that some of the things that we're doing are really we're seeing results from. And then things that we are still developing, we are actively working with all of our stakeholders to figure out what's the next step, what's the next tweak. So we are wide open to that iterative design. So if we need to tweak something, if we need to improve something, that's what we are here to do. That's the work that we're blessed to be charged with. And so all of that relates back to our growing excellence goals. So then returning back to an earlier slide where we defined our modified allowable goal. So the state language again says that boards of school districts request to use a modified supplemental amount for programs for at-risk students, secondary students who attend alternative programs and alternative schools, and returning dropouts and dropout prevention shall approve by resolution a comprehensive program plan for the programs and budget costs, including an annual request for a modified supplemental amount for funding the programs. So that is what we are here to do tonight. And so we're going to hand it over to our friend Heather.
I remember you saying there was a delay. Okay, so that means we're here today. We then request the school board consider to move to authorize the district's administration to request the full 5% from the school budget review committee for the purpose of the 25-26 at-risk and dropout prevention program.
So you'll see on the left, we don't have that full number yet, Heather, right? So we're hoping that we have it in later December. Not sure we will, but really what you will approve on December 16th is just our ability to request the 5%. And you'll see what that 5% looked like last year, and what we had to match then within our general budget, just to have numbers of reference. All right, we'll open it up for any questions.
Director Beck?
One quick question. Have we ever not asked for the full amount?
No.
Okay, good. And do you have an idea of sort of how many students get directly, supported or touched by this funding? Just out of curiosity.
Well, in our current model, we're able to provide services. From this specific funding source, it would be our secondary buildings. However, we use other funding sources such as Title to target our elementary level buildings. Okay. And so that's really where we see our full at-risk continuum, but it's different funding sources that allow us to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Anybody else? Question, comment? Director Barnes.
So I'm just curious, the four things: academics, attendance, emotional safety, on track for graduation. Is there a sort of pie chart distribution as you're thinking about at-risk students, or is this sort of cumulative? I mean, I'm thinking a little bit about both whether the N is large enough to move, or we're trying to spread the at-risk pool so thinly that we're not actually focused on those students who we know we can save or motivate. Can you help me understand that? I mean,
I'm just sort of thinking about the cumulative impact. And if I take myself, I'm short, I'm slow, I'm slightly overweight, and I'm balding now. And I mean, that's a pretty bad profile. I need help. And whether or not there's sort of a similar, or if each one of those buckets is sort of separate. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah. What? Yeah. Why don't you start, Jen?
So, absolutely. Some of the pieces in our at risk continuum are going to touch all students, that every kid has access to. And some of our kids need additional, right? So, we've talked about MTSS before, where tier 1, every kid has access to this. And tier 2 is right for some kids, but not all kids. And some kids need specialized, really intensive supports. So, we have that ongoing conversation about what's the best use of the funding, as far as we have this very specialized pocket of students who need exactly this, and we want to put some resources towards that. And then we have maybe a larger pool and they need this, and then what do all kids need? So that's an ongoing conversation that we're having all the time.
I would add too, to your point, because of the families and students we serve, we have a lot of vulnerable children in our district. So these funds alone could never serve and meet the needs of those students and those families. So that's why we have to implement what Jen just described. And if you'll notice kind of what we're spending these dollars on, it's not heavy on the academic side. And that's one area that we always kind of critique of ourselves, because that's a portion of it. But that is being met through other funding sources based on where students are currently performing.
Anything else?
I also, could you be a little more specific in the positions that are chronically difficult to fill, just so we know what we're talking about there?
I would say those are some of our paraprofessional positions.
Director Potts, do you have a question or a comment?
No, I do not.
Anybody else? And it's just the way I wrap my head around it. When you say, and I'm making up the number because I'd have to go back and look, 82% graduation rate. That doesn't light up. Okay, if I have 100 kids, that's 82 kids, which means I have 18 kids that didn't. But then in that 5-year, out of those 18, so could you put numbers to it, not percentages? Because I'm not sure I've got a good grasp on how many kids aren't making it. I mean, 82% of what? It kind of leaves me out. So I'd like to know in the 4 years, how many, and then if you add that 5th year, what would be the total then on that? And again, it's not a big hurry, but that's how I see things, not in percentages.
Yep, that's something we can provide to you in a Friday report.
Thank you. Anybody else? Director Poston.
So it states here that there's a required local match amount of 1.7 million. So what bucket does that come from?
That comes from our general fund. It has to be general fund, so it wraps around your dropout prevention program. It basically so that we have our own piece of the game. And so, again, those are positions that are in our district that are serving everyday needs, and then there's a portion of their job that is on top of that. That's like that dropout prevention program piece. So, to be honest, those are all general funds, not added to general funds.
So when I'm trying to think, when we set a budget for that, how do we come up with a figure when we're setting the budget to have that amount available?
Sure, and I would let Kevin really kind of flesh out the budget piece of that, but it's really part of your general staffing. So, for instance, we have APs at all of our high schools. A small portion of the AP time would be directed toward dropout prevention. We know they do that. They do discipline. They're doing attendance pieces. So it's really extracting like 20% of their time, even though they're general funded. We know we have to have that person in there. It's a portion of their time that's part of our dropout prevention program. So I would say, to answer that, it would be that the staff is already budgeted for. We're just extracting the pieces that are really around our dropout prevention program.
Thank you. On slide 17, we have the various programs listed. Do we have any way of knowing how many dollars go into each one of these? Is that broken down that far, or how could we look at that?
Yes, we would be able to provide that to you based off the program.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I assume this will come up in our last meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. And last on the agenda is staff dress code. I will turn it over to Superintendent Schneckloff.
This conversation is fulfilling a board request by Director Goza, where the discussion topic would be, what does it look like to potentially put and I'm going to say it's a work rule instead of a policy. In talking with our attorney, we can do something along these lines. And so this is the fulfillment of the board request of Director Goza stating, let's ensure that our staff are supporting the Davenport schools with their attire. Is that fair statement to the board request?
Yes, I just get tired of going to my kids' school and see rival school stuff that sends a bad message to our students that they don't matter and that these other districts are better when they're not supporting their schools. So it's a very fair assessment. I'm sure everybody has that issue in all the buildings, but it's very disheartening.
Director Beck.
So would this be a request that when during the school day and at a school event where you're fulfilling your duty of the job that you not wear other schools?
I believe it be when you're being paid.
When you're being paid. Okay.
Director Potts, do you have a question or comment about this?
Yes, I do. I thought we had a dress code. We have an existing dress code, is my understanding, and it was applied for any time employees were on duty.
Correct. We do have a dress code that is for on duty. This is the board request was a request to make adjustments to that dress code, essentially stating that we wear attire that supports Davenport schools when we do spirit days, so to speak.
Does that answer your question, Director Potts?
Yeah, I don't. In my experience, that I didn't see that as a rather significant problem. The bigger problem was teachers coming to school looking like they were ready to do yard work. I'm serious.
I know you are. Anybody else question or comment on this? Director Beck?
Yeah, I think, I agree. It's important to support the schools you're in. You don't go to work at Hy-Vee and in their corporate office and wear, Jewel Osco stuff, but I don't know about official, what the rules are for official policies and things like that. And I guess I guess this brings me back to when we provided a logo shirt for everybody. We did that, 2 years ago? Maybe remind people that we provided those. I don't know, or offer, open up the Davenport store again. I don't know. Might be another thing we could do to sort of promote this. Yeah. I mean, I agree with the general idea.
Well, and I'm not sure it's just Spirit Day. I mean, if you have a button-down shirt that says Bears on it, you know, I mean, you could wear that any day.
Yeah.
But if you're wearing a button-down shirt that says a neighboring district school, I think that's what the issue is.
Yeah, and I agree. It's not cool, but yeah, I'll go with whatever people think is.
Director Barnes?
I will say that I'm not crazy about a policy, and I hope that it doesn't come to that. I'd much prefer that people are using good judgment, and considering the message that they're sending to our musicians and our student athletes and all of the people who, students who are expected to carry the pride of the school district out there in the world. And you know, right, we're not going to allow a member of the men's basketball or boys basketball team to choose to wear a jersey representing another school district. So I just hope that this conversation, which I applaud Director Goza for putting this on the agenda, might illustrate that we want people to take pride in this school district.
Director Hayes?
Would this be more so an administrative regulation versus a policy, since we already have a policy in effect?
It would be an adjustment to our work rules that every employee signs, which would allow any supervisor to enforce. Like Director Potts says, we already have a dress code. This dress code policy, this would help administrators enact the policy. Correct.
Any other questions, comments? Director Gosa?
I'll just, I appreciate you putting this forward so we can have this discussion, because this has irked me for the last 9 years, and I've said it multiple times, and I'm glad something's being done. And I know, like in my line of work, if I go work at John Deere, I have to sign a contract that I'm not going to wear Caterpillar stuff and things like that. I mean, it's just kind of respecting it. My personal stance is, if you're good enough to draw a paycheck from us, you're good enough to support us. I mean, we're no different than anybody else, you know. But I'm glad you're able to do some of this, and I'm glad Miss Meyer supported me on this one. So tell Wendy I said thank you. Write that one down. It happened at 6:54 on Monday night, but I'm glad that this is finally being done. I've had staff members say things to me, like when I'm at my kid's school, at things that, you know, it's embarrassing. It really is. It sets a wrong message for our parents too. We're supposed to be all in doing this stuff, and I don't see them letting that happen at any of the other school districts. And I did ask while we were up at ISB, and everyone seems to have something in place and doesn't really have that issue. So I'm glad it's being done 9 years later, but it's getting done. And when you put that in, I want that in a frame. Thank you.
Director Hayes?
Now, is the store open just at the beginning of the year or year round? Okay, so Davenport swag can be purchased at any time. Thanks.
And you can go to the store and pick it up, because I did some online a couple months ago.
And now is when we say, look at the bottom of your screen for the web address of the store. No, I'm just kidding. We're not that fancy. But maybe it's good to send out a reminder that the store is open all the time, once a year or something like that. Or, hey, it's almost the holiday season and people like to give gifts. I'm just saying. But I agree with Director Barnes. It'd be nice to not have to remind people, but I agree that if you're working for us, then you should not be wearing attire that supports for all intents and purposes, our competitors. And so I am, in theory, good with the idea. So.
Well, and plus I think all schools have, like when I was at McKinley, I had McKinley garb.
Yeah,
and
they
then
all
when I
have
had
their own
Central,
stuff.
at Central,
Yep.
so it wasn't always what Davenport schools, but each school has their own
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we're not going to ask somebody who works at McKinley to not wear a Monroe t-shirt if they happen to have one that day. Are we? Or are we going to? It's as long as it's within the Davenport schools. We're okay with it. Okay. Cool.
Anybody else? Director Potts, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. An hour and a half and 3 meetings.
Well done. Well done.